Welcome to Honzuki no Gokyokujo, Ascendance of a Bookworm, which is getting harder and harder to say every week. The show about a girl who's been transported to an alternate dimension and has now decided to become a librarian or a bookmaker. Last week we saw she secured the rights to sell her paper. She's basically a business whiz now. And also Lutz called her out for not being the actual mind that he knows. So we're on the verge of some kind of great awakening here. So without further ado, let's get started. So last episode we had a little sneak peek where mine turned away for a second and Lutz made a face. So it seems he's decided not to show her straight up to her face that he knows who she is, but just realize it behind her back. But he doesn't seem like the type of person who would take any action on that, so I don't think we really have to worry about that. Oops. So I don't think he's gonna call her out or report her to the authorities or anything, like if someone malicious had found out. We haven't really met anyone malicious in the show at all yet, actually. That's another thing. Eventually I think we will meet someone malicious and opposed to Mind's goals. When we do, I don't really want to see it, because I kind of just want to see her climb up to the top by herself without any resistance at all. But you know what they say, you don't have a good story without conflict, so I'll take what we get. But I'm kind of enjoying this whole arc where she just does everything and she's like the king of the world, but I know eventually we'll meet some resistance. Aren't you a little young to be doing this? Yes, we are. Classic Phineas and Ferb joke there. Okay, continuing. That is the exact face he's been making every time she does something like this. He's like, who the fuck are you? Where's my mind, you know? I think we're gonna get some confrontation by the end of this. Okay. Nice. So if you ever read any fantasy type work, you know that there's a pretty hard decision to make regarding how you refer to periods of time during a day, periods of time over a year, like how many months do they measure time in fortnights or weeks or whatever. He just said 1 bell's time, which means 1 hour, I'm assuming. It's pretty cool that he said 1 bell's time, because if he had said 1 hour, that means they have a concept of an hour, which implies many other things. So if you know anybody who writes or deals with fantasy stuff, this is something that they have to mull over. Especially people that I know who write fantasy stuff. It's a hard decision to make whether you want to refer to stuff using our world terms or just to make up your own terms, but they have to be terms that instantly translate and you can understand without having to think about too much. Like 1 bell's time, you can understand instantly. It's like, oh, the clock, the bell rings for every hour, so 1 bell from now until the next hour makes sense. Really good, that's a good translation too. I guess Crunchyroll subs aren't all that bad. We forget this is a magical world sometimes. The first time we saw it was with that contract where they pulled out this contract magic for no particular reason, and now we have this weird tree that sucks up all the nutrients. I wish we had trees like that in real life. We could fix a lot of the world's problems if we had trees that grew that fast. I had the same idea. Okay, so otherwise you'd have to chop down trees, right? And this show is so wholesome, it's not gonna advise chopping down trees to make paper. So they have a special demon tree that they then cut down. So in fact, chopping down trees is a good thing, because otherwise the demon tree would grow too big and suck up all the nutrients. This show is just consistently wholesome. It's pretty good. He's not having any of her, he's not accepting this at all. He's like, okay, so let me get this straight. You made contracts with adults. You basically surpassed a workman's ability to read by handing him something that he wasn't expecting. Then you know exactly the process for making paper. She is kind of trial and erroring a little bit, because I guess she hasn't really done it in real life, but she knows the process of how to do it. So she knows what to expect at each step. But still, this is pretty surprising that she's able to pull it off so consistently so far. And he's like, there's no way you're 5 years old. I don't buy this. 6 years old now, but whatever, still too young.
本当にわかるのか？
任せて、したことあるから。
He's like, when have you done this before? And she's like, I made it out of milk cartons. And he's like, what are milk cartons? And she's like, I'm just digging this hole deeper and deeper, aren't I? Just stop talking mine and just do your work. It's probably best not to associate with Lutz because he's just going to get more and more suspicious of you, or to just tell him the truth, which would destroy him completely. So you can't do that. Good luck figuring out a solution to this conundrum you've gotten yourself into.
本物のマインはどこ行った？本物のマインを返せよ！
I knew this was going to be the reaction. This is not a good thing. Being an imposter in a fantasy world is one thing, but then having someone find out you're an imposter and then ask to bring the real mine back is like next level crazy. We don't even really know where the real mine is. In fact, we haven't even stopped to ask that question. Urano, who's in this body, is kind of just like going with whatever's happening. She's not really considering what could be the consequences of her inhabiting this body, because she doesn't really have any choice. I mean, like, what would be the result of her doing that? She would just be at home all day trying to connect with some other spirit who inhabited this body before her. Seems like a bit of a stretch. Maybe it's like a Freaky Friday situation, trans-dimensional Freaky Friday. So mine has gone back to the dead body that Urano left behind. That's not a good look, especially because she's 5 and she has no clue what's going on. And even though this mine is who we've come to associate with the character of mine, this isn't really mine. This is a completely different person who's inhabiting a body in this fantasy world. We keep forgetting that conveniently, but Lutz doesn't, and that's good, because if he doesn't remind us, we're just going to go with the flow of things and forget why we're here in the first place.
前もマインと同じように熱に飲み込まれるのか？
His dominant trait is clearly concern, because he's the reason he questioned her in the first place is because he's concerned about the real mine, and when then he finds out that the real mine is beyond his help, and then the new imposter mine is somehow dying from this fever as well, his concern switches from finding the real mine to helping the imposter mine. He seems like a really nice person. That's why he's so concerned about this in the first place, which is good, because without him we wouldn't have got this exchange where she's like finally admitting, the absurdity of her situation. She's kind of just thrown into this body and she has to deal with it, and the way that she's been dealing with it so far is by making books, when really she should have been investing in like making a nutrition shake or something to keep her body alive, some kind of actual food that she could eat that wouldn't kill her and allow her to walk for more than 3 minutes every day. Someone commented that they like this, like they like the way that mine is shown in the show because she's so sickly and so fragile, and that speaks to their experience. And I do think there's something to that. It's like, it's very hard to, if it wasn't for mine's body, she would basically have been like in a much further along place by now, because she's been in it for almost a year now. And the only thing that's really stopping her is that mine gets sick and needs to rest for days and days and days. So I really feel like it helps someone who's had that experience come to terms with their own experience, in the sense that they feel like they can relate to a fantasy character who's so motivated, and I feel like that inspires people to be motivated as well, even though if they're dealing with a similar problem. The episodes are getting better and better on this show, and I think us finally addressing the problem that Mine's had since the beginning, which is the fact that she's now some random kid in a different world, and even though she's chosen to cope with it by making books and paper and everything, at the end of the day it's still like a weird experience for her to have, and that she finally acknowledges it, and that Lutz is able to, like, see the other Mine and be like, okay, this person is also deserving of my respect or my companionship to some degree. Is like, that's a big step that we've taken in this episode. And even though we'll probably have to deal with this maintenance of this relationship going forward, I feel like we've established something new with Lutz that will last much further than the kind of like obligatory kind of guardianship that he's had of her so far. It's good to see. Let's keep going.
なら、俺の知ってるマインってほとんどお前なんだよ。
That's what I wanted to ask. She was so sick before, she could never leave the house, and it's not like he went to her house to visit her, because that's not something that you usually do. So really, who he thinks of as mine is mostly just this person. And And he seems to have realized that too. You know, for someone who supposedly is not that smart or whatever, Lutz is pretty quick on the pickup. He's picked up everything so far extremely quickly, writing, reading, everything else. And now he's just like, yeah, mine, you've been around for a year, so really I only know you. I don't really know the other person at all. So if you want to stay, just stay. Your family can't even tell the difference. She's so young that they haven't really made any memories of her to be really, like, she's been sick the whole time. What do you remember of someone who's been sick for like 4 years and then suddenly became someone else? You remember the person that they became. You don't really remember the person that was there before, because there's not really much to remember. She was just sick the whole time. That's not to say it's not like a loss that they lost their daughter or whatever, because their daughter was lost to some degree. And I don't think that's something that we're going to deal with in this show. That's just like too much of a downer for something like this show to tackle, but that is something that happened. But she's like doing her best to take her place and not just like shun her family and do something else completely, which is, I think, within her right to do, because she's like a grown-up who's in a kid's body. So it may be in her best interest to stay with her family for now, but I think if it was me, I would not be so like tending or like caretaking of the people around me, just because I'd be like, I'm 5 years old, this is so weird. But the new mind seems to be quite, like cognizant of all the things that she needs to do, so I'm pretty sure they're happy to have her around. How Lutz deals with this going forward remains to be seen, though. Whew. Okay, that was episode 8 of Honzuki no Gokujo Honzuki no Goku, Ascendance of a Bookworm. The point is, we've reached kind of the end of a certain arc of Mine's journey towards making books, I think, here. We've reached the part where she no longer has to worry about like her domestic life. It's more so about her interactions with Otto-san and Benno-san and all the people that she's come to know. And we're moving on to more like the macro implications of her abilities to make stuff now. She can make books pretty easily, I think. Now she just has to like bind them and get some book glue, and then it's done. Now she needs, I bet she could offer services like transcribing people's books to multiple copies, because it feels like in this realm where they write on parchment, there's usually only like one copy of a book that exists somewhere, or like 3 or 4. She needs to make a printing press if she wants to make books like widely available. Let's see how she makes that, because I feel like you can't skimp on that. You need like mechanical gears and clocks and everything. Clocks, not clocks. Gears and like belts and motors and just a lot of moving parts there. We'll see how that happens, but this show is just like a wholesome slice of science and emotional connection every week, and I look forward to watching it every week. In fact, it's the only show that I eventually end up watching every week. Sorry that I missed Beastars last week. I'll make up for it this week. But that Hoshiai no Soraya episode last week was pretty good. It seems like we've settled on these 3 shows to do every week. So Ascendance of a Bookworm, the tennis show, and Beastars. So look forward to those 3 every week. I wanted to do Psycho-Pass, but it doesn't seem like there's much interest in the Psycho-Pass for some reason. It might be because they've taken such a hard left turn on being like this kind of action thriller show, where it's now more like Blade Runner split up into like 10 hours of animated content, and the art style has fallen off to some degree, and the backgrounds are really kind of nasty, but we'll get to that eventually. Like maybe once every 2 weeks we do Psycho-Pass or whatever. Anyway, this fall season is kind of crazy. There's so many good shows. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.